reduce numbers. Any other burning things? Yep, is it Zach?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's almost impossible for one evaluation to be like comprehensive for an entire program.
okay,
It just, there's no way to say or put into numbers or put into, like there's like kind of quantitative.
quantitative numbers don't capture the story of what's
Yeah.
going on in the programs. All right, and one question that I have for you, Zach, just to make sure that I'm following what you're saying. When you say evaluations can't be comprehensive, are you referring to a survey? Are you, what do you mean by when you say
Well,
evaluation?
If you think, or like, you think about the kinds of evaluations that you did, like at the end of like a class or something.
Mm-hmm, gotcha.
So if you're a participant, at the end of class, you get an evaluation.
Right.
Rate this class, like rate this professor kind of thing. There's not really a way for that evaluation to have all the right questions.
That makes sense. I gotcha. So it's not reflective of your entire experience.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, any other things that anybody wants to throw at? Yep.
This might connect back to the time thing, but as nonprofits with multiple sources of funding, every funder has their own evaluation process they want to do, and so it's just hard to keep track of all the different evaluation processes.
All right. Okay, so, go ahead.
Oh, just one last thing, and also, evaluations are sometimes dependent on, other folks or other, factors that, may make it difficult, so if you need tutors to turn in hours, and whether or not they turn in hours can, affect, your ability to evaluate,
Right, so if I need data from this group over here and they're not giving me the data or they're not able to do the assessment, then that affects the rest of the evaluation. All right, yep,
Sometimes evaluations, if it's pertaining to a grant and you send those evaluations off, it takes months and months and months and months for them to come back.
not real time.
And then your program, I mean, you have to reflect back on what happened. So sometimes, evaluations have to be sent off to a third party,
Right,
and that's difficult.
right. All right, so a lot of these things that you brought up, we will talk about today, and I think a lot of the issues that you're bringing up are very real issues with evaluations. And today, we're gonna focus on evaluation planning and also data collection, but really, as AmeriCorps members, this is a year-long process, and we'll be working with you the entire year on a lot of these different things. And really, by the end of the year, you should not only understand your evaluation, but you should also understand how to help other people with their, evaluations in different nonprofits. All right, so what about likes and dislikes? What are you thinking is a good thing about evaluation, or has the potential to be a good thing about evaluation? Over here.
Helps us improve our game.
All right, so improvement. Let me make this a little bit bigger. I can't even see it up here. I'm just trying to, I want to capture everything that everybody said. All right, so improvement program. All right, what else?
It's rewarding to see growth.
All right, rewarding to see growth. All right. Anybody else?
You can advise your next steps.
Okay, advise next steps. All right. Anything else? All right, well, I think those three things capture a lot of what evaluation is supposed to do when it's done the right way. So let me switch back into presentation mode, and I will make that bigger, and I'll share this with everybody so we have it. All right, so now that you've said everything that you think evaluation is, or what evaluation means to you, and what you don't like about it, what you like about it, let's talk about what it is and what it means for your particular organizations, and what it means for you as members. And I think for site directors, it just makes sense, since you have so many different evaluations and things that you're reporting to, it makes sense for you to know what we want, or what the group wants, so that you have a sense of where it fits and how things overlap or how they may not overlap. All right, so who's interested in program evaluation? We mentioned this: program staff, participants, funders, the public. And truthfully, I think that there are several organizations that evaluate because they know it's a good thing to do. You want to find out about your goals. You want to find out about how to improve. But when it comes down to it, a lot of people do evaluation because it's required by the people that are shelling out the money. And basically, people that are giving out the money want to know how the money is being used and how it's making progress, or how you're making progress towards those goals. So for AmeriCorps members in evaluation, what is your role as a member? And that's what I'm focusing on right now. What are we asking you to do? So the Literacy Corps is responsible for evaluating its work. The North Carolina Literacy Corps is given a grant, and they're given money to do certain things. And we'll talk about those specific things that they're asked to do. And so they're responsible for evaluating the whole program. So all of the different sites that members are at, all of the different programs that members are working in, North Carolina Literacy Corps needs to know about the goals are volunteering and basically improving skills. And so the program overall, when I say overall, I'm talking about Nikki and what she does, and also what Megan is responsible for. They've got to look across the whole program. So as an AmeriCorps member, you're not necessarily responsible for knowing what's going on at Blue Ribbon Mentor Advocacy Group and also what's going on in Wayne County. You're responsible for knowing what's going on in your specific program. And what you're doing in your specific program feeds into the overall evaluation. And we'll talk more specifically about that, just giving you an idea of where we're going. So each AmeriCorps member is responsible for knowing about the evaluation and participating in the evaluation at your site. Some of you have multiple people at your site, multiple members, so you're going to work together. As much as you can work together and delegate different things, it kind of lessens the load for everybody. And we'll talk about what those specific responsibilities are a little bit later. But knowing that you have those responsibilities, now let's talk about what is evaluation. So the first thing is when you hear the term evaluation, a lot of times we use the word evaluation as synonymous with a survey or some kind of data collection instrument. You'll get something that looks like this, and you'll say, we've got to turn in this evaluation. Well, it's a piece of an evaluation. It's a survey, but this is not the evaluation. All right, the evaluation is a systematic plan for how to measure progress. That's just one piece of it. And a lot of times what happens is people in programs get this survey and they say, okay, here's the evaluation. And you're like, okay, let me do this stinking survey because I have to do it. And there's no understanding or no knowledge of why I'm being asked to do this and what is it really for. So today I'm trying to kind of demystify those things. So when you get a couple of surveys, you actually know why you're doing it and you know how you can shift it to meet your program's needs. But at the same time, meet the needs of the Literacy Corps program. So today we're going to talk about evaluation planning. So where does all of this come from, and where does it come from in your particular sites? And we're also going to talk about data collection. How do we collect the data? Why are we collecting this data? And how does it meet back to what Literacy Corps needs? And also, how does it map back to what your particular program needs? So those are the two big things. And probably later in the year, we can talk about some of the other bubbles, but we'll see how it goes, and we'll see what you guys' needs are. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is a logic model. Raise your hand if you've used logic models. Anybody? Awesome. Great, well you guys know all this already. So I'm just going to walk through it step by step so then you can apply this to what your program logic model looks like. So I'm guessing most of the programs have them, but if they don't, maybe you could even create one after today. So the first part of having a logic model is you have to have an objective, right? So this is my phony, made-up program. I'm just trying to really simplify it. My idea, if I had $1 million and somebody gave me a huge grant and I could do whatever I wanted with it, I want to heal the world with chocolate because chocolate is my thing, and I like it. So anyway, most programs are not going to do that. Your program probably has some other big goal, like increase literacy or to improve the lives or the likelihood that women will enter into STEM programs or literacy programs or something like that. So I'm willing to work with chocolate. Just put in your mind whatever it is that your program, your big idea, what you really want to do, what the dream is if the program was working the way it should work. All right, the second step of a logic model is looking at the activities. So what is it that your program does on a daily basis? What is it that your program is getting money to do? For my program, we're going to pass out candy bars at each community quarterly festival, and you notice how that maps back to healing the world with chocolate. There's got to be alignment there. And then I'm also going to feed chocolate to students in ISS. So kids are in suspension. My theory is if I give them chocolate, that they will be more engaged and more excited about being in school. So just notice the alignment. It's gotta make sense, right? All right, so then you've got your objectives, you've got your activities, and then you've got your outcomes. So if I was to feed the students candy bars, if I was to give them chocolate while they're in suspension, what's gonna be my outcome? What is the end of the day thing that I wanna make sure happens? What is the outcome that I can measure or make sure that's going on, that I can count, that I can ask about to see if it's really happening? And I want to increase access to chocolate bars at Candyland Middle School. All right, so this is the program plan. This is what my program does. So this right here is not evaluation. This is just an understanding of the program. So now that you know what my outcome is, what I want to do, increase access to chocolate bars, next comes the evaluation step. So my question for you is, if you had to evaluate this program to make sure that we were meeting our goals, how would you measure that? What would you do to know that I've actually done my job and I'm increasing access to students at Candyland Middle School to chocolate bars? My question. How could I find that out? As an evaluator, what would I do? What kind of information would I want to collect to make sure that was being done?
Mary, and you'd want to measure the access before, like at the beginning of the day or whatever.
Okay,
And then maybe through a survey or something.
gotcha.
And
Yes.
then measure it after.
So that's where your survey comes in, or your focus group, or your assessment. You only need to do an assessment or a survey once you have specific outcomes that you want to measure. A lot of times there's surveys that people kind of just make up with all different kinds of things on them, but a good survey should map back to exactly what your program is doing. There should be a direct connection. And so if there's not that direct connection, then the survey, well, one, you probably want to find out why are we having to give you this data? Why is this data important? Why do you need to know this? Because it should all be connected. And the surveys that we'll do here should also be connected to your program and to the overall goals of the literacy core. So these are my outcomes. That's the first part of the logic model. Now the computer's froze. All right, so now we get into how am I going to evaluate these things. So we already talked about how we might evaluate the outcomes, but you also want to evaluate your activities. When you hear evaluate activities, all that means is how will we know that you use the money the way that you were supposed to use the money? What's your evidence? So what I want to do is I want to pass out candy bars at the quarterly community festival. These are the types of evidence that I need to prove that I did this. I want to have my receipts for my candy bars. I want to have a list of volunteers who came and passed these things out. I want to have brochures from these different festivals. Basically, I'm just collecting documentation. I'll put it in a notebook somewhere to show that, yes, we actually were doing all of these things. Almost even like a portfolio. So when somebody comes through and they ask about your program, you say, well, yes, look at all of these things that we're doing here. These are just things that you want to keep to really monitor. It's called, sometimes you'll see it as monitoring what's going on in the program. And also sometimes you'll see people give a survey for that because they want to see how well was it done. So if I pass out candy bars and the kids, nobody likes chocolate, what's the point of me passing out a candy bar, right? So you want to find out why those things are being done or how well it's being done. All right, and then as Mary mentioned, you might use a survey or something to evaluate your outcomes. So my outcome there was to increase access to chocolate bars. How am I going to measure it? How am I going to make sure that this actually happened? Well, I'm going to do a student survey, or I could do a focus group where I bring kids in and I talk to them about their experiences. Or, I should have a student database. I think I left off one of my objectives. If my objective is to decrease behavior problems, I need to look at the student database with all the behavior infractions in it to see, are we in fact decreasing that, right? So all of those things in totality make up a logic model with an evaluation plan attached to it. So for any time that you're asked to fill out a survey, to do a focus group, to collect a reading assessment, there should be a logical reason behind it. It shouldn't just be because we said that this is a good thing to do. your evaluator or the program manager should be able to show you where it came from. Are there any questions about logic models or activities or any of those kind of, does that make sense? Okay. Good. All right, so the next thing that I want to show you is the evaluation plan and the logic model that we've created for North Carolina Literacy Corps sites. Now this is a general evaluation plan. I'm going to walk you. It's not opening. Hold on. Just open it up. What I'm going to do is I'll walk you through what the site evaluation plan looks like. That way you'll understand where those data collection points are and why you're being asked to do it. As soon as I can open my file. Sorry. All right, while I'm waiting on that to come up, I'm going to, let's see. Oh, here it comes. All right, good. Sorry about that. Let me just make it a little bit bigger so we can all see it. All right, so this is the logic model for North Carolina Literacy Corps sites. And again, the reason why I'm showing you this is so when we're asking you to collect data, you'll know exactly why. And the hope is that it'll make sense to you. That way it's not like I'm just being asked to collect this just because. There's a logical reason to it. And also you can begin to think, especially for the site supervisors, you're asked to collect a lot of data, how everything kind of works together. If you have questions, stop me. Because I want to make sure everybody gets it. So the two main goals of the literacy program are one, to recruit and train volunteers. The other big kind of dream goal, mine was to pass out or to heal the world with chocolate. This one is to recruit and teach participants. So those are the two things that AmeriCorps members are responsible for. And so I've listed the activities here. Recruitment events, volunteer trainings, volunteer management plan. These are things that AmeriCorps members are asked to do. For under participants, we've got recruiting participants or having activities for participants and tutoring and other services. And this is just kind of the general idea, but you guys are going to have to really, you can specify this for your particular sites. Because I know each site's a little bit different. And then over in the third column, we've got what the outcomes are. So the AmeriCorps program wants to measure or wants to find out how are you increasing the ability of volunteers to provide services. So basically the volunteers that you're bringing in, that you're training, they want to make sure that those volunteers actually are learning how to be better volunteers, right? You want to make sure that they can do their job. And then they also want you to increase the number of volunteers providing services by recruiting. And then I have that blank there. There's a goal out there of the number of volunteers that you're supposed to recruit. And we can talk more specifically, Nikki, you can talk more specifically about those numbers later. And then under participants, you're going to recruit a certain number of participants. You're going to increase the blank skills of participants. Some of you are working on literacy. I think some people are working on media literacy. Other people are working with adults. So basically we want to see how those skills are increasing. And then also for the adults, you're going to recruit a certain number of economically disadvantaged. That's another measure that they want to find out how many of the participants say that they're economically disadvantaged. And then you also want to look at how are the participants increasing their ability. So that's kind of where we're trying to measure. Those are the things, those are the outcomes, those specific things that we're looking to see the programs can do. Is there anything on that first half on that program plan that doesn't make sense or that I can clarify?
I just have a question, I'm clear on that. Is this available?
Yes,
Do you have this available? for us?
yes, I will give that to you.
Yeah, we'll share all of this, and then also for all of the members, in your folders, you do have copies of the evaluation plan. The site supervisors already have it from their host site applications, but there's also copies of the performance measures that we have to use from the Corporation for National and Community Service, which is the overarching AmeriCorps organization. So you can see exactly where we pulled those performance measures, what they've asked us to track, and what our exact numbers are for the evaluation plan.
And so, yeah, basically the commission says, these are the things that we want to see, this is what we want to know. That information is given to us, and then we sit down and we figure out, okay, how can we actualize a plan based on these performance measures? Yep,
And will you address how we set attainable goals?
yes, that will be something that we work on.
Yeah, and you'll work with your site supervisors too. When they applied to host a member this year, they did indicate how many volunteers they would expect you to be able to recruit or their goal is. And so you'll want to talk with your site supervisor about their needs, because it's going to be different. We're not going to give a blanket number for each site to recruit. It will be different for each site based on your needs.
All right, and then over there on the right side of the outcomes, that's the evidence of activities. Those are the things that we're going to be asking you to collect and keep in a notebook. So we're getting ready to go through all those things so that you know exactly what those things are. But my hope is that now, since you hopefully see the connection between, okay, you're asking me to turn in, training roster for my volunteer trainings. Why do I have to do that? Well, we're asking you to do that because one of the goals is to recruit and train volunteers. So you turning in your attendance basically helps us see, wow, look at all of these volunteers. Look at how much work they're doing over here at this site in regards to this goal. So that's basically all of the data for the activities that we're asking people to collect. And hopefully with the logic model, you can see why we're asking you to collect that. And I'll just scroll over so that you can see the evidence of the outcomes. These are the other pieces of data, and you can see there's some overlap. These are the other pieces of data that we're going to be asking you to collect. And we're going to go through these different pieces of these different instruments so that you can see what they look like. And then you can also begin to think about how might we shift this a little bit so that it meets the needs of our organization. All right. All right, so any questions about logic models, about your particular site, or how we're going to shift this for your particular needs?
Over
Okay.
on the right. Yeah.
What'd you say?
Oh, I was just saying over at my right.
All right, so we'll do a little bit more, and then about what time do you guys usually take a break?
What time is it now?
It's 9:20.
Usually about an hour in, but
About
whenever's
an hour in?
but
Okay.
whenever's best for
We'll
you.
go through a few more slides, and then we'll
Yeah.
take a break. All right, so we'll do a little bit more with logic models a little bit later. That way you can actually see what it looks like for your particular program, and you can kind of get some hands-on experience with looking at it and making sure that you know how it works and with the data. But another important thing, as you've seen those lists of data, there's multiple layers of collecting and organizing data. And I think this is another space where information gets lost in evaluation, because there's data that first of all, there's data that the AmeriCorps Commission is asking for, right? So then there's data that Nikki is asking the members for. Then there's data that members are going to their site and saying, I need this. Then there's the site going to participants or to volunteers saying, I need this. So there's this long chain of data collection. And that's kind of where I think information gets missing. So it's really important to have systems in place so that that data gets to where it needs to go. So there's 3 different, and these are my terms, I just made them up to kind of help me understand all these different pieces of the data collection. These are not official evaluation terms or anything like that. But one, there's immediate data collection. And that's when a volunteer sits down with a student, or it's 2T, and they're doing a reading assessment. That's immediate. And then once you get all that data, such as the reading assessments, and you get into data organizing, you've got to compile that data and put it together. And then you've got to share it either with Nikki, and then Nikki's got to share with somebody else. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. All right, so we talked about the immediate data collection at the level of the participant. This could look like registration forms. When volunteers come in, they fill out a form, says who they are. Bader test, that's a reading assessment. We'll talk about what that looks like for the K through 12 people. Volunteer satisfaction surveys, attendance. So right now, I think it's important for you to think about this because basically as members, you're probably somewhat responsible for making sure that the volunteers or whoever's directly interacting with participants collect this data. So as members, you're going to have a way, a system for making sure that you get what you need, the data that you need when you need it, and making sure that you have a timeline in mind and all those kind of things. So we'll talk more about that, but just keep that in mind. There's multiple steps to this evaluation process, and I just want to make sure that everybody has a sense of the complexity, and then we'll talk about exactly how to get it done, okay? So just stay with me and we'll figure out those exact steps. So then after the immediate data collection is the data organizing. So we're going to compile all of the data in a way that makes it easier to summarize and analyze. So a lot of the things that we just asked you to collect or that you saw on that list, you're going to be putting in a notebook. So we'll talk about the notebook a little bit later, and we'll also talk about the Google Drive spreadsheets. That's going to be another way that you collect data and that you put it all together and then you organize it. So there's the immediate data collection, me gathering sometimes paper surveys from participants. Then there's a level of me figuring out as a member how to organize all that information, how can I compile it in a way that's useful to me and also useful to other people that need the data. And then there's the issue of the spreadsheets. How are we going to report it and share it out? So I think at this point, before we get into Google Drive spreadsheets, it makes sense to take a break. You usually take about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, so we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll need computers for
Yep, we have the computers right here, and we'll get those set up.
Okay, so we'll get those set up while you're on your break. All right, 10 minutes. That's